get underway this morning. We're going to have our introductory speaker who will open things up, Michael Tabor.
Brothers, sisters, I think it would be appropriate at this time to say all power to the people, all power to the people. And each and every one here should recognize that this mass outpouring, this coming together, is in itself a glaring illustration that the people must have the power. Look here, down here in Philadelphia, as a matter of fact, when the Black Panther Party first announced that there would be a revolutionary people's constitutional convention, it was at that moment that the forces of fascist repression in this country, led by Richard Nixon, Spiro Agnew, John N. Mitchell, J. Edgar Hogg Hoover, and all of the rest of the fascist bandits. It was at that point that the pigs got together and they sat down and they went over this situation and they dug that something hellified was about to jump off. They dug that for the first time in the history of this raggedy society, the true people would come together and really begin to examine the very foundations, the premises, and the assumptions upon which this society was founded. And upon examining those assumptions, they would have to come to the conclusion that the present Constitution and the present system of government has got to go. It's got to go. So what did the pigs do? They said it can't come off. They said we got to sabotage it. They said that we cannot allow tens of thousands of righteous people in this society to come together at one time and to get their heads together and start questioning what this society is all about. They said that can't happen, and they said that they were going to stop it. The job of stopping this convention, the job of stopping this plenary session, rests in the hands of a notorious fascist beast by the name of Rizzo. Rizzo brought together under his command not only the fascist Gestapo forces of Philadelphia, but they imported agents and other forces from all over the country. They laid out their timetable, and they said that 1 week before the people come here, they would attempt to create a condition, they would attempt to create a situation that would lead to further persecution of the Black Panther Party, and that would intimidate and frighten people away. But we see right here that ain't nobody frightened, that nobody gives a damn about Rizzo because we're out here. Rizzo, speaking in behalf of the power structure of Babylon, has issued a challenge, not simply to the Black Panther Party, but they have issued a challenge to the righteous and peace-loving people of the society. And that challenge says that, he said that we are punks, that we are cowards, that we are not men and women. Well, we say that Rizzo's challenge is late. We say that his indictment is late. We say that the people of this society have handed down their own indictment. We say that the pigs of America are guilty of mass murder. They're guilty of genocide on an international level. We say that they are guilty of persecuting every minority group in this society. They are guilty of persecuting and oppressing women. They are guilty of persecuting and oppressing homosexuals. They are guilty of every conceivable crime to the human mind. And we say that as punishment for those crimes, the only fit place for them is in the graveyard of human history. They have to be purged from the planet. They have to be. We're here today. Yeah, we're here. It shows another thing, too. It shows that when a people are truly dedicated and sincere and determined to gain their just freedom, justice, and equality by any means necessary, that all of the forces of repression, that all of the enemies of the people, all of the guns of the power structure can't do a goddamn thing, because we're going to get it together anyway. You can't stop a people when they want to be free. You can't stop them. You can stop them. One of the problems in our society today is that there are far too many people. There are far too many people who still labor under the delusion, who still believe that America is a free and democratic society. I don't know. It's a mind blower. It's a mind blower when you have tens of millions of people in this society dying from starvation. It's a mind blower when you have the government and the army of this country dropping napalm bombs all over the world. It's a mind blower when people can be starving and dying every day, and there's still people running around talking about America is free. That's a mind blower, and we got to straighten that out. We got to straighten that out. And when we check that phenomena out, we find that the primary reason why so many people feel that way, why so many people think that America is free, is because while we were in school, we were fed a steady and heavy diet of bullshit consisting of praise and glorification. We were fed a diet that said that America is right on, that America is the most equitable society, that America is the most humane and just society on the planet. When we were in school, they told us, when you dig it, when you think about it, they told us how the government is supposed to work. They told us about the anatomy of the government, but they didn't tell us how it really works. They didn't tell us about the physiology of the government. They didn't tell us that this government, from its very inception, was never a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, that from Jump Street, from the get-go, it was a government of the pigs, by the pigs, and for the pigs, and that the people have never had no power in this society. When we objectively check out the facts and the history of this country, we find that about 200 years ago, a racist by the name of Thomas Jefferson, way back in 1776, sat down and wrote a document that has gone down in history as being one of the most eloquent and one of the most glorious documents ever formulated, ever drawn up. And in that document, it asserts that all men have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It goes on to say, and that was a hell of a wolf ticket at that time. That was a hell of a wolf ticket. It was a hell of a wolf ticket because the individuals who said it at that time constituted nothing but a two-bit and a chump-ass colony. And they were being dominated, they were being oppressed, and they were being exploited by the so-called British Empire headed by King George. So not only did they sell a wolf ticket to the effect that every man has a right to determine the course of his own destiny, but they went on to say that whenever any form of government comes down foul, when they begin misusing, when they begin exploiting, when they begin oppressing the people, and when they show beyond a doubt or contradiction that they have no intention of righting those wrongs, then the people have a right to off them. That's what it says. But when we check out that document further, and we weigh that document against the reality of the situation at that time, we find that back in 1775, when it was hooked up, they said all men were created equal. All men were created equal. Now, a lot of people never gave that no thought. But the fact of the matter is, black people at that time weren't considered people at all. We were property. Women weren't considered people at all. It didn't say nothing about all men and all women are created equal. It just said all men. But even in that document there, as quiet as it's kept, one portion was left out. In the original draft, there was a part that went to the effect of King George was guilty of transporting and enslaving a people who had never done him any harm. And that was a crime against humanity. But the strangest thing happened. When that document, the Declaration of Independence, was finally published, that part wasn't in it. That part wasn't in it. And for a very good reason. Because that indictment against King George, made by George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the rest of those pigs, not only was that a valid indictment against King George, but it was also a valid indictment against the very individuals who wrote it, because they were slave masters themselves. So we see the contradiction right there. And so they hooked up their document. So they say they had to be free. They said it was wrong to be taxed without having adequate representation. They petitioned, they boycotted, they even had a tea party. They were so cowardly in their tea party that they didn't even take credit for it. They were so racist that they blamed it on the Indians. Finally, as so often is the case in history, push came to shove. Push came to shove, and there was no denying any longer that in order for them to be free, they would have to go to war. They would have to fight. So they picked up the gun as a last resort, and they told the British Empire to come on with it. That they ran down to us, that they fought nobly, that they fought valiantly, that they were courageous, but that was bullshit. They was punks, because George Washington fought that whole war in retreat. And the only reason the suckers was able to win was because Holland, France, and Spain declared war on England at the same time. And that's a hell of a historical lesson, because any time, we've seen it time and time again in history. We saw it with Hitler, we saw it with Napoleon, and we saw it back there during the so-called American Revolutionary War, that no nation in the world can fight wars on several fronts. And that's why they blew, because they was trying to take care of business all over the world. They were trying to enslave and oppress people all over the world, and they got jammed. So okay, they say that George and them chumps won. And then they went on back in, then they came up to 1787, and they sat down here in this so-called city of brotherly love. Brotherly love, can you dig that, brotherly love? How can there be any love in a city where the police commissioner is named Rizzo? How can there be any love here? How can there be any love in a city where this same fascist dog gives orders to his police to raid the homes of not only Black Panthers, but brothers and sisters off the street who were helping in the registration for the people here to come? When he gave the order to raid their homes, to shoot them down in cold blood, to drag them out of their homes and stand them up against the wall and have them to strip buck naked, that reminds us of slavery. That reminds us of slavery. He told them to strip. How can there be any love in a city where such inhuman and barbaric acts are allowed to go unpunished? If there's any love here in this city at all, it is manifested right here in the gymnasium of Temple University. This is where the love is at. This is where it's at. And so the founding fathers sat down back in 1787, and they said they were going to make a government. They said they were going to draw up a constitution. They said they were going to make laws for people to live by. But when we check out that document that they hooked up, and when we check out the personalities who were down with the formulation and the drafting of the Constitution, we find that in actuality, they were not so freedom-loving. They were not so righteous. They were not so humane after all. We find that the founding fathers consisted of individuals such as Alexander Hamilton, who referred to the masses of the people as being the beasts. We find that it consisted of individuals who were so democratic and so freedom-loving that they felt that the senators and the president should hold their office forever. We find that it consisted of individuals like George Washington, the so-called great founding father, who's documented as having sold a slave for a keg of molasses. We find that it consisted of individuals such as Thomas Jefferson, who was supposed to be the most freedom-loving out of that whole bunch. He was the most freedom-loving, and he was a slave master. So that's the type of individuals who hooked up the government. That's the type of individuals who created the society and who drafted the Constitution. And what were the positions of these individuals? What class did they come from? They weren't slaves. They couldn't have been slaves because they owned slaves. They owned property too. They controlled the shipping. They controlled the industry. They controlled every aspect and every sector of the economy at that time. They were quite simply the ruling class, the ruling class. And when they sat down to draft that document, they had one thing in mind, and that was creating a society that would enable them to protect their property rights, creating a society that would legalize their enslavement of black people, creating a society that would enable them to create an army to guarantee that the masses of the people did not rip their stolen wealth off. They were all about creating a society not based on freedom, justice, and equality for the people, but rather creating a society that would enable the pigs to perpetrate their madness throughout all of this country. When that document was hooked up at that time in 1787, there were approximately 600,000 black people in this country. There were approximately 300,000 Indians, 300,000 because they had offed over half of them by that time. There were approximately 240,000 indentured slave servants, and there were I don't know how many women, and none of those people, none of them were included in that document. As a matter of fact, in the Constitution, when it was originally drawn up, in 3 separate sections, the issue of slavery was dealt with. In one section, the first one, it stated that black people would constitute not a human being, not a 100% human being, but rather 3/5 of a man. How can you be 3/5 of a man? They said we were 3/5 of a human being. And they figured they was giving us a play at that because before they sat down and did that, we wasn't considered no part of a human being. Those Indians had no rights whatsoever. The indentured servants and the women had no rights whatsoever. That whole document was about doing nothing other than just being able to create a society where they could rob, steal, plunder, and just go crazy. And this is exactly what they did. It's interesting to note that it was not until the year 1791, that the pigs were forced to sit down and include the so-called Bill of Rights. That section of the Constitution, which supposedly, we got to emphasize that, supposedly guarantees certain liberties to every man, woman, and child who is a citizen of this country. It guarantees that they have a right to assemble. It guarantees that they have freedom of speech, freedom of the press. It guarantees them the right to bear arms and to defend their homes against attackers. It guarantees them the right. It guarantees them the right to be safe in their homes. It goes on to point out that they cannot be arrested and thrown into jail and have an excessively high bail thrown on them. It guarantees them so many things. When we look at it, it seems some kind of beautiful, but when we check out the reality of it, we find that nowhere in America do any of these things exist. And it was not until the non-propertied whites, the poor whites of this society, got together and threatened to start another war, threatened to start another revolution if George Washington and them creeps didn't get down and hook up that Bill of Rights. They only included the Bill of Rights upon threat of being overthrown, upon being overthrown. And so the years passed by. And black people remained in a state of total bondage, of total enslavement. 1850 rolled around, and they said the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court plays a very key role in this society because they are the ultimate interpreters of the Constitution. There is a misconception that exists in the minds of many people that the Supreme Court operates and functions independently of any outside pressures. They're like supposed to be above and beyond politics. Now, I don't know how anybody could come up with an idea like that, but a lot of people think that. A lot of people think that Supreme Court decisions come from the hand of God. They were written by the Almighty up above. And in 1850, that Supreme Court sat down and said that any slave who escapes from one state or from one section of the country and who goes to another must be returned. That's what they thought about us. In 1857, Chief Justice Taney of the Supreme Court of this country handed down a historic decision that said that black people or black man has no rights which a white man is bound to respect. That was back in 1857, and nothing has changed. That situation has remained the same. Now we come up to this creep by the name of Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln said something that was very hip, and we should all take heed of it. He said you could fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And Lincoln should have known, because he did a damn good job of fooling 4 million black people in this country at the time, that when he sat down and wrote that Emancipation Proclamation, that freed us. 4 million of us went for that book. 4 million of us. That's what they ran to us in school. But when we check out history, when we check it out, we find that Abraham Lincoln did not sign the Emancipation Proclamation because he sincerely and honestly felt that black people should be freed. Oh, no, that's not the reason why that chump signed that document. He signed it out of political and economic necessity. That's how it came down. Because when we check out the history of this country, we find that the South at that time, on January the 1st, 1863, when he issued that document, the South was putting fire to the North's ass. They was giving them a righteous ass whipping. Abraham Lincoln and the Northern generals had to come up with a scheme that would in fact diminish the power of the South, that would undermine their military strength. So what did Lincoln did? He sat down and said that all of those states that have broken away from the Union and who refuse to come back, that the slaves in those states are free. Now all we have to do is look at that and we see that that's absolute madness. That's ridiculous. Because first of all, the states had broken away from the Union, the Confederate States. Now, Abraham Lincoln had no power over those states. So how in the hell could he free slaves that he had no power over? He didn't free them. Then it goes on, the contradiction becomes even greater when we check it out, because he said that in those states who had broken away from the Union but who were coming back and who would be loyal to the Union, they could keep those slaves. They could keep their slaves. So in effect, what he did was he freed those slaves which he didn't have no power to free, and he kept in slavery those that he did have the power to free. And it was, in fact, because of the heroic effort, because of the fighting spirit and the spirit of sacrifice manifested by those 186,000 black men who fought in the Civil War under the pretext, under the belief, laboring under the delusion that by fighting and laying their blood down for this country to preserve the Union, that they get some freedom. The only reason why the North won was because of those black soldiers. That's the only reason. And then they came together in Congress. Congress at that time was dominated by the Republican Party. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. At that time, the Republicans had a reputation of being the liberals. They had the reputation of being the radicals, Thaddeus Stevens and all them other funny time chumps. They were supposed to be the revolutionaries at that time. But when we check it out a little further, we find that all of the laws, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment that were enacted by Congress and that supposedly gave black people freedom, that supposedly gave black people the right to citizenship, and that supposedly gave black people the right to vote. We find that none of those laws were passed as a result of a sincere desire on the part of the government of this country to repay to black people what they had stolen from them. No, none of those reasons accounted for what they did. The main reason why we got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was because at that time the Republicans were representing the interests of the northern capitalists, of the financiers, of the industrialists, and of the bankers. And that group, in order to do what they wanted to do, and what did they want to do? They wanted to control the entire country. They wanted to expand their power. They wanted to move into the West and set up railroads. They wanted to build industries. But they realized in order to do that, they would have to have absolute control of the government. They would have to have absolute control of the government. And as long as the Southern Democrats were in power, that control was impossible. So what did they do? They said, well, we'll give black people the right to vote. We'll make black people citizens. And behind Abraham Lincoln freeing them, and behind Abraham Lincoln being a Republican, they knew goddamn well that black people would pledge their allegiance to the Republican Party. And that's what we did. That's what we did. They had what they call Reconstruction. Reconstruction. Anyone here today who is under the delusion that the problems, the economic, political, and social problems that afflict black people can be solved by way of having black representatives functioning in the political arena, in the traditional political arena, anyone who believes that, all you have to do is look back at Reconstruction. You want to talk about some political representation, black people had what was called political representation at that time, and it didn't get us a goddamn place. As a matter of fact, during the Reconstruction era, black people sent two senators to the Senate, and from all places they came from Mississippi, Revels and Bruce from Mississippi. During Reconstruction, there were 20 black representatives to Congress. During Reconstruction, there were blacks who served as associate judges on the state court. There were blacks who served as mayors. There were blacks who served as DAs. There were blacks who served as police commissioners. There were blacks who functioned on damn near every level of the local, state, and federal government. But when the ruling class in this society decided that black people had outlived their usefulness, all they did was they just squashed it all. And despite all of that so-called political representation, despite all of the so-called gains that we made during Reconstruction, despite all of that, when the year 1876 rolled around and it was necessary for Rutherford B. Hayes, who was the Republican candidate for the presidency at that time, when it was necessary for him to capture the necessary votes to win that election, all he did was he formed a deal. He made a deal with the Southerners, and that ended Reconstruction. That squashed that. And the next day we found ourselves in a worse trick bag than we were in during slavery. Slavery had been ushered back upon the stage of American history, and it has remained until this very day. Every dealing, every form of relationship that we have had to this society, that applies to black people, that applies to Puerto Rican Americans, that applies to Mexican Americans, that applies to Indians, that applies to Eskimos, that applies to poor whites, that applies to women. Every dealing that every one of those groups has had with this government has resulted in nothing more than a lot of meaningless promises made, and nothing came of those promises, and the end result was a flim-flam and more persecution and more oppression. Every promise that they've made has only served to put us asleep. Right on. In the year 1896, that prestigious and august body, the most powerful judiciary body in the world, the Supreme Court of the United States, sat down, handed down a ruling. It was called the Plesley versus Ferguson decision. A brother by the name of Plesley from down in Louisiana hopped on a train, and he sat in the section that was reserved for whites. And the conductor came along and told him he had to move because black people could not sit in that section. So Plesley took it to court. And when it reached the Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal accommodations were constitutional and were fair. That is known as Jim Crow, In 1954, the Supreme Court supposedly squashed the Jim Crow law by outlawing segregated schooling. Here we are 16 years later, and over 90% of the black children in the South still attend inferior and segregated schooling. So that's how much rhythm we get out of the Supreme Court. That's how much rhythm we get out of the Constitution. That's where that's at. Given the fact that America today is trapped, is caught up in the most serious crisis that has ever confronted this nation, given the fact that economically it is undergoing what has to be called a mini depression. The country is uptight economically. They try to obscure that fact. They try to delude the masses of the people into believing that everything is cool. Instead of saying depression, they say you have an inflation and a recession going on at the same time. What does that mean? It means that the top of the economy, the lid is blowing off in the form of inflation, and it means that the bottom is falling out as a result of recession. Whenever you have an economy that is beset by a recession and an inflation at the same time, you have a depression. You have a depression. That's why the unemployment rate is going up. But the administrators of this society would have us to believe that that's simply a passing phenomenon. It's nothing to really be worried about. When the unemployment rate went up to 4%, they said, well, don't worry about it because in the next session, in the next 3 months, that will be cool out. When it went up to 4.5%, they said the same thing. Now it's pushing 6%, and they're still talking that same madness, and there's still a lot of people running around here believing it, and that's a drag. That's a drag. Politically, America is also caught up in the worst crisis that has ever confronted it, because now they have found that, as Abraham Lincoln said, you can't fool all of the people all of the time. And a lot of people in this society have just been fooled too goddamn much and too goddamn long, and their eyes are opening up. Veil after veil of illusion, veil after veil has been lifted from their eyes, and now they're standing and they're taking a cold, hard, objective look at what America is all about. They're looking at that flag up there that they once thought of as being the symbol of freedom, justice, and equality. They're looking at that flag that they once recognized as being a flag that should be respected above all other symbols in the world. They're looking at that flag now they don't think of it in those terms. When they look at that flag now, they don't think about freedom, justice, and equality. They think about slavery, racism, oppression, and imperialism. They look at that flag now. They look at that flag now, and they don't think about hanging it outside of their window and flying it with pride. They think about taking it into the bathroom and using it when they run out of toilet tissue. They look at that flag now, and what comes to their mind is not America the beautiful, but America the hideous. They look at that flag now, and what comes to their mind is not the American dream, but as Malcolm said, the American nightmare. They look at that flag now, and they think about not hanging it up, but taking a match and burning that motherfucker up. That's what they think about. So politically and socially and economically turbulent and chaotic is the present situation in America today. So enraged and so divided are the masses of the people that on one hand you have tens of millions of people who are saying no more will we submit to this economic exploitation. No more will we submit to the political oppression. No more will we submit to the social dehumanization. And on the other end of the social scale, on the other end of the spectrum, you have those whose mentalities are so perverted and so depraved that they say you can do anything but just don't spit at my flag. Because if you spit at my flag, I'll kill you. That's insanity. That's insanity. That's the situation in America today. And when we look at what the Nixon administration is doing, when we look at what they're doing, we find that in actuality it is nothing unusual. It is no weird phenomenon. What they are doing is the natural outgrowth of the basic nature of the society. We got a lot of liberal politicians in America who accuse the Nixon administration of violating the so-called fundamental and basic rights enunciated by the founding fathers and put forth in the Constitution. They say that Nixon has brought scorn and disgrace upon the founding fathers. But when we look back at American history, they say that Nixon, because he is having passed all types of repressive and reactionary legislation, has put the founding fathers to shame. That's bullshit. Because when we look back at history, and we start talking about repressive laws and laws that in effect restricted and squash the fundamental and basic rights of human beings, when we want to find the beginning of it, all we have to do is look back to the founding fathers. They started the show. They started the show. They talk about preventive detention. They talk about the McCarran Act and the Smith Act. Well, the founding fathers started that in motion way back in 1789 when this country got hooked up into a little job conflict with France. The so-called Federalists. George Washington was a Federalist. They were in control of the government. That was the name of their political party. And to squash all opposition, they sat down and they wrote up a law. It was called the Sedition Law. And it said that any man, woman, or child who makes a scandalous, malicious, or derogatory remark about the president, of the government, Congress, or any other of the symbols of this society would in fact and were in fact incarcerated. They were thrown into jail. They were thrown into jail. In application, that simply came down to mean that anyone who said anything about this society that was contrary to what the pigs, that was contrary to what George Washington and them creeps wanted to hear, could be thrown in jail. That was way back in 1789, and the same thing is happening today. The repression that we are experiencing in this country today, it's nothing new, it's nothing new, it's old hat. A lot of us are hung up because we can only visualize, we can only see fascism in terms of Nazi Germany or fascist Italy. We can only see fascism, we can only think of fascism when we see herds of stormtroopers rolling down the street, goose-stepping and screaming thunderous Sieg Heils. We can only see fascism when we look up and see a Adolf Hitler. We can only see fascism when we look up and see a Benito Mussolini. And until they see that, a lot of people are going to refuse to believe that America is fascist. Well, all I have to say about that is you can wait for the Sieg Heils, you can wait for the goose steps, you can wait for your Adolf Hitler, and by the time they arrive, it'll be too goddamn late because your ass will have been run into a concentration camp. They don't need no Hitler in this country. They've gone quite a few better than Hitler. When you take Spiro Agnew, when you take Richard Nixon, John Mitchell, when you take the Joint Chiefs of Staff, when you take Richard Helms, the head of the CIA, and put them all together, that aggregation of demented and perverted beasts can outdo, they have passed anything that Himmler, Hitler, and Göring ever imagined. They've passed them. They've gone way ahead of them. While we're talking about Hitler, that brings to mind a statement that Hitler once made. And I suspect that he got the idea from America, because he stood up and said that if a lie is told long enough and strong enough, people in time will begin to believe it. And I'm sure he learned that from America, because America has in fact ran down the longest and the strongest lie ever perpetrated in history. The lie that says America is a free and democratic society. That's the biggest lie ever told, the biggest lie ever told. A lot of people are still talking about the 6 million Jews that the Nazis exterminated. And they have forgotten about the 50 million black people. I don't know how many million Indians. I don't know how many million Mexicans. They're still talking about those 6 million Jews, but they done just shot over the fact that during the era of slavery, America participated in the callous and cold-blooded extermination of 50 million black people. 50 million. And that was just during the era of so-called overt slavery. Now, I don't know how many more have been massacred. I don't know how many more have been lynched, burned, castrated, and murdered since that time up until now. I don't think there's enough numbers to account for it. So we got to stop talking about what America might do, what America might not do, because the fact of the matter is the issue ain't whether America would commit genocide. The reality of the situation is that America has been perpetrating genocide since the year 1607, when them racist bandits first landed on that rock, when they first set foot in Jamestown. They've been doing it since then. We cannot look upon the United States of America as simply being a nation. The United States of America is far more than a nation. It is, in fact, the most ruthless, the most bloodthirsty, the most oppressive, and the most exploitative empire that has ever existed in the annals of history. The United States of America is, in fact, the number one threat to the continued existence of the human race. When we look at the military power of America, we find that in terms of capabilities for destruction, in terms of being able to destroy and just squash, we find that the military strength of America is greater than that manifested in the Huns of Attila. It's greater than the Mongolian herds, and it's more powerful than the Nazi war machine. It's more powerful than all of them put together. And America has, in fact, massacred and slaughtered more people than all of the madmen in history put together. America has already made Adolf Hitler look like a peace demonstrator. We have to understand that the forces that are presently in control of this government, and a lot of people think that Richard Nixon is in control of the government. Richard Nixon ain't in control of the government. Richard Nixon is merely a glorified functionary and flunky. And if that's not the worst of it, he is also a paranoid with a loser's complex. All he in actuality does is to relay the orders given to him by Rockefeller, by Ford, by the Pews, by the DuPonts, by the Mellons, and by General Westmoreland and the other forces of the Pentagon. Oftentimes, policies on an international, mainly on an international level, but also on a domestic level, are implemented. And Richard Nixon don't know nothing about it until the next day when somebody comes up to him and hands him a statement, and he gets on national TV that night and makes a State of the Union address and begins with that book, "It's about my fellow Americans." You wonder why, a lot of people wonder why the president of this country can stand up one day and say that the military forces of the United States have no intention whatsoever of invading, say, Laos or Cambodia. That was the last thing that would ever enter our minds. And then the next day over UPI, and by way of Chet Huntley, David Brinkley, and Walter Cronkite, we hear that America has in fact made an invasion. And then the president gets up and says, well, this invasion was absolutely necessary because the Viet Congs and all of the communists were about to take over the country. They done took it over already, and we got to take it back. That's what that's at. When we check out America economically, we find that the wealth of America exceeds that was had by the pharaohs of Egypt. The wealth of America is greater than the wealth of the sultans of Baghdad. It's greater than the wealth of the Pope in the Vatican, and he got 12 billion. He got 12 billion that they know about. You take the wealth of the Rockefellers, which is estimated at being at $7.5 billion. You take the wealth of the DuPonts, their wealth is estimated at being in excess of $7 billion. You take the wealth of the Ford family, their wealth is in the billions. You take the wealth of the Pews who own U.S. Steel, you take the wealth of the Mellons who own Chrysler, Bethlehem Steel, Westinghouse Electric, you name it, they own it. You take their combined wealth and put it together, and the pharaohs of Egypt, the sultans of Baghdad, and the Pope of the Vatican look like welfare recipients. That's what they look like. The forces of the military and industry in this country are now firmly wedded together. A so-called great military leader by the name of Dwight Eisenhower quite a few years ago said that we have to watch out for the military-industrial complex. He was down with starting it. And then he came back and said, you got to watch out for it because it's getting out of hand. That was quite a few years ago. I think just when he left office back in 1960. Here it is 1970 now, and we don't have to watch out for it no more. We got to deal with it because it is, in fact, the force that controls this country. The power in this country now firmly rests in the hands of the Pentagon. It is in the Pentagon where all of the attacks that are being perpetrated against the Black Panther Party and other progressive and revolutionary forces in this society and the American people in general, it is in the Pentagon where all of those activities are being centrally coordinated, and it is there in the Pentagons that the orders emanate from. It's going down in the Pentagon. So we don't have to worry about them coming to power because they control the society. Between the guns of the Pentagon and the wealth of the ruling families in this society, there exists a plan that is, in fact, the most barbaric and the most hideous scheme ever thought up in human history. Their plan is to have economic domination and military domination of the entire world. Around the end of, at the end of the World War II, they sat down and they dug. They dug that the most wealth, the greatest cash could be made by during times of war. So what did they do? They dedicated themselves to the proposition that they would keep a war going on somewhere on the planet at all times. And what would they do? They would supply the military needs of those who were fighting. They would make guns, they would make boats, they would make planes, they would make jeeps, they would make tanks, they would make every form of material necessary to carry out a war. They would make every form of material that can be used to destroy humanity. They sat down and they said, we will build massive military sites, missile sites. They said we will hook up missiles that can not only go into the air, but they can go into the air, hit their target, come back, and land in the same spot. And they did all this on the pretext that Russia was about to attack. They signed military pacts with 42 different countries around the world. They have over 1 million armed forces stationed in over 30 countries around the world. They are waging war all over the world, and at the same time, they're going to stand up and tell people that they are all over the planet enslaving, exploiting, oppressing, and dehumanizing people because they want to make the world safe for democracy and freedom. Now, I'm sorry, but anybody who can believe that that's really why the United States has in the last 5 years dropped more bombs on Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam than all of the bombs dropped during World War II, if they can really think that that is being done to make the world safe for freedom and democracy, all we can say is that they are extremely ignorant. They are either a racist or a fascist, or they just dropped in from another planet. Because all we have to do is look at the world situation today, and we find that from the islands of the Philippines to the swamps of Southeast Asia, to the tropical jungles of Africa, to the arid deserts of the Middle East, to the Bolivian tin mines, to the cities of South America, on up into the colonized ghettos of Babylon, we find that all over the world, people have risen up and they're moving like a mighty tidal wave. And they're saying that it is our duty, it is our obligation to humanity to destroy that very force which is responsible for the enslavement of the planet. This is what they're saying. They are saying that whatever must be done to destroy U.S. imperialism and capitalism and racism must be done. They are saying that no longer shall the struggle be waged by way of conducting it according to the rules and regulations laid down by the oppressor. They're saying no longer will they attempt to secure their human right to self-determination by doing it according to the way that the oppressor says it must be done. They're saying now that they will do it by any means necessary. If it means picking up a gun, they pick up the gun. This is what they're saying. And the people of Asia, the people of South America, the people of Africa, the people all over the world, their eyes are focused on the United States of America at this time because they know far better than a lot of us here in Babylon know that the only force, the only power, the only group of people that are capable of dealing a death blow to the monster known as America are those who live right here within the belly of the beast. They know that until the righteous people right here in Babylon begin to move in a unified and revolutionary fashion to destroy this society and create a new society that will not be based upon the depraved and mad dog barbaric ethic of dog eat dog, cat eat cat. You beat me today, I'll steal from you tomorrow, and the day after, we'll get together and sock it to blow Joe. They know that in order to create a society wherein people can live in a harmonious and cooperative fashion, where people, if they want to lay up and smoke some pot in peace, they can do that. If they want to lay up and make love, they can do that. If they just want to groove and be cool, they can do that. If they want to have the right to determine the cost of their own destiny, they can do. They got to do that. They got to do that. They know. They know that in order for any of those conditions to exist, that black people here in America, that Puerto Ricans here in America, that Mexicans here in America, that Chinese here in America, that Japanese here, that Eskimos, that poor whites, that women, that all oppressed groups here in America must unite, must move in a revolutionary fashion, must assume an uncompromising stand, must never turn back, and must deliver a death blow to U.S. imperialism. They know that. They know it. They know it. Right on, right on. Right on, power to the people, 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 power to the people. Right on. Right on. Right on. Brother Elridge Cleaver, the Minister of Information of the Black Panther Party, Brother Elridge calls America Babylon, calls it Babylon. When we look back in history, or we check out the Bible, we find that thousands of years ago, a so-called civilization, we got to emphasize so-called, Because wasn't nothing civilized about Babylon, was nothing civilized about the Roman Empire, was nothing civilized about the Greek Empire, and there damn sure ain't nothing civilized about America. You can't have no civilization when people are being enslaved, oppressed, and persecuted. That ain't civilization. That's barbarism. That's barbarism. That's what that is. But at any rate, Eldridge calls America Babylon. And when we check back and we look at Babylon, we find that thousands of years ago, this society existed. And it was a society that was based upon, the foundation of that society was slavery. The foundation of that society was oppression. And we find that because of the situation that existed within that society, it came to a tragic end because the people there got tired of that bullshit and they put a squash to it. And when we look at America today, we find that America today is nothing more than the modern day descendant of ancient Babylon. And when we look at America and we look at the international scene, we find that America is uptight, it is up against the wall. We are in fact witnessing what must be called the dissolution and the disintegration, the collapse of the the modern day Babylonian Empire, the American Empire. This is what we're watching. America is crumbling and falling, and those who are in control of this society realize it. They realize that their empire is on the verge of becoming extinct. We see this happening. We see it happening in Vietnam, in a small Southeast Asian nation, where the people there have been fighting for over 40 years to gain their liberation. And we see, even in the most optimistic statements made by the administrators of this society, by the president, by the vice president, and by his press secretary, you can't forget him, because he does all the cleanups, and by the Pentagon, even in their most optimistic statements, it's obvious that America has lost that war. That war is over. It's over. It's over. But if they have won, why is there still fighting going on? They're taking care of business in their area. They're taking care of business, but there's still fighting going on, but the war has been won. Why? Why? Because here in America, we have not done our job yet. You see, that's where that's at. And we have to understand that. We have to recognize that. We have to recognize that the individuals who control this society will not hesitate in a desperate, mad dog, insane attempt to preserve their empire. They will not hesitate to drag all of humanity into utter oblivion. They will not hesitate to do that. And anyone who thinks that they would, anyone who thinks that the Constitution is still valid, all they have to do is reflect back just a few months, it wasn't even a few months ago, when the Congress, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the President got together and in fact squashed the Constitution. Squashed the Constitution. Two of the most sacred so-called rights of the people in this society are, one, that you are safe in your home. Your home cannot be invaded. Your door cannot be kicked in. If anybody wants to come in and they are representatives of the so-called law enforcement, they have to knock on your door and they have to give you a warrant and say, we have a warrant to search your home, or we are coming for said or certain individual. Also, it says that in the 8th Amendment, that nobody can just be arbitrarily thrown in jail and have an excessively high bail placed upon them. They also must have a speedy and quick trial. All that's in the Constitution. All that's in the Constitution. But what did they do down in D.C. Just a little over a month ago? They got together and they squashed the 4th Amendment by way of the no-knock law. Black people have known throughout their history here in this country that we have never had no rights. We have never had no rights. Brothers and sisters on welfare have always known that they have no Fourth Amendment rights, because any time a welfare investigator or any time a police wants to come into their home to investigate a so-called welfare violation, they just come on in the crib. They don't knock. So welfare recipients have never had any Fourth Amendment rights. And now nobody has no Fourth Amendment rights, because that was what the no-knock law did. And the con game that they ran down to justify passing that law, they said that the reason for it was because when we come to issue a warrant for the arrest of a dope dealer, we find that we can't get them because they flush all the narco down the toilet bowl. So how are we going to deal with that situation? Well, we'll deal with it by squashing the Fourth Amendment and giving the police the power to just come on in your home. So they say that this will only be done in an incident where it is suspected that the dope dealer in the house will, if the police knock on the door, have an opportunity to flush it down the toilet. But we know for a fact that not only will that law be applied, not only will that be applied to so-called narcotics dealers, but it will in fact be applied to every man, woman, and child in this country who has stood up, taken a firm stand, and said that, well, no more am I going to submit, no more am I going to endorse and follow the fascist policies laid down by the Nixon, Agnew, and Mitchell administration. So when we look at it, we find that one brother, Martin Sostra up in Buffalo, was given 41 years in the penitentiary for a so-called possession of heroin. Martin Sostra was a revolutionary, and he was thrown in jail because of possessing some goddamn heroin. 41 years. We go down to Texas, and we find that the brother Lee Otis Johnson was given 30 years for a so-called sale of a stick of marijuana. 30 years. So anybody who thinks for one moment that no-knock law will just be applied to so-called dope pushers has got to be insane. They've got to be insane. They're going to apply that law to everybody who they define as being an enemy of this country, who they define as being subversive, who they define as being revolutionary, who they define as being a freedom lover. And you can rest assured your mere presence here, by being here today, you have stepped clearly into the category of a subversive. You have stepped clearly into the category of an enemy of the state. You can believe that by being here today, you are now classified as being a threat to the internal security of this country. By being here today, you have assumed the status of outlaw and criminal. And to that we say, right on, because we want everybody in this society, everybody in this society should be a criminal. Everybody in this society should be subversive. Everybody in this society should be a conspirator. Everybody in this society should, in short, dedicate themselves to the proposition that the only good pig is a dead pig. That is what they should dedicate themselves to. If wanting liberty, if wanting justice, if wanting equality and freedom, if wanting the right to determine the course of your own destiny, if wanting the right to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, without having some sadistic pig who derives sexual gratification behind clubbing you in your head or pumping a bullet into your body, if wanting all those things makes you a criminal and a subversive, we say, let's be criminal, let's be subversive, let's be outlaws, let's be outlaws. It's a hell of a thing when we think about it. Revolution in this society at one time was a glorious and noble word. It was glorious. But now the word revolution, by those very individuals who have sworn to uphold the basic and fundamental rights guaranteed to the people in this society, have taken the word revolution and made it a sinister term. Now, they have made it a hideous term, an ugly term. Well, we say this. We say if the enemies of the people, if they would come out and say that what we're all about is righteous, if they would come out and say revolutionaries are hip, if they would come out and say that revolutionaries have a right to do what they're doing, if they would come out to say all that, then we'd have to get another word. Because as long as the pigs say that revolutionaries are dangerous, as long as they say that revolutionaries have no right to function in this society, as long as they say that revolutionaries should be destroyed, then we say, well, we're moving in the right direction. Because anything that they endorse, anything that they say right on to, we say no to. Anything that they say no to, we say right to. It's a basic. It boils down when you clear away all of the smoke screens, when you clear away all of the rhetoric and all of the fog, when you clear away all of the word trickery and rhetoric, when you clear all that away, you find that it boils down to a basic fundamental question of who's right and who's wrong. Who's right and who's wrong. We say that the exploitation of the broad masses of the people in this society is wrong. They say it's right. We say that denying people the right to assemble and demonstrate, we say that's right. They say that's wrong. We say that every man, woman, and child has a right to determine just how they want to live. They have a right to determine what will be made, who makes it, how it will be distributed, and who owns it. They say that's wrong. They say that's wrong. It's a question of right and wrong. That's all it boils down to. We say that people should be free. They say that they shouldn't. We say we're right. They say they're right. So we ain't even going to argue about that anymore because we know we're right. We know it. We know it. And we also know, and if we don't know it, we better get hip to it. We better get hip to it. That what confronts us today in America is this. A choice has been given to us, an ultimatum, which in effect says, you will submit to, you will endorse, and you will not whisper one utterance of displeasure or disapproval at what is happening in this society. You will endorse murder on an international level. You will endorse racism, capitalism here in America. They're saying that you will either endorse those things or you will have to pick up a gun and get what's yours. America has said to black people, America has said to all those in this country today who are determined to be free, they said that if you want anything more than what America has historically given you, you're going to have to take it. You're going to have to take it. When the pigs come out, and they got to be crazy, when the pigs come out and say that the revolutionaries, the snipers, and the righteous bombers in this society are cowards and punks because they don't come down in the street, you understand, and fight like so-called men, we say to that, and to all righteous brothers and sisters in this country, we say that we will conduct our struggle along the lines that we see fit. If it is more advantageous for us, if it is more advantageous for the people to go up to a rooftop with a 30-06 or with an M14 and destroy a beast, because this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about destroying people. We're talking about destroying beasts. And the first thing we have to realize is that the individuals, the beasts, who control the society are not human beings. They're not people. They have forfeited all claims to being human beings. They have forfeited that. Anytime you shoot down in cold blood, anytime you shoot down in cold blood men, women, and children in the street, anytime you drop bombs on people all over the world who have committed no other crime other than just wanting to be free, anytime you perpetrate such dastardly and hideous deeds, you have forfeited all claims to being a member of the human race. You have forfeited. We say that whenever a people, any people, have been enslaved, exploited, oppressed, dehumanized, burned, lynched, castrated, and subjected to every other form of mistreatment conceivable to the human mind, we say that when all of that has been done to a people, anything that those people do to gain their freedom and to get that beast up off their back is justified. It's justified. And make no mistake about it. Anything. Not only is it justified, but it is self-defense. It is self-defense. A lot of people are confused about the whole issue of self-defense. They view self-defense as simply being confined to a situation wherein a pig moves on you and pulls out his gun and threatens to kill you. You don't have no gun, you know. You should run and try to leap in his chest. Nah. Self-defense goes much further than that. It means if a pig moves on you today and he got a gun and you ain't got a gun, quite simply you ain't in no position to be dealing with him. But it means, you know, if he does that at high noon, you're not in a position to deal with him. But come sundown, and the streets are dark and deserted, and you go up on that roof, and you take your action out, and you fix up your sights, and you put your index on that trigger, and you see him and you pull that trigger, that's self-defense. That's self-defense. That's all it is. It's self-defense. It's self-defense quite simply because if you don't get him, he's going to get you the next day. That's why it's self-defense. That's why it's self-defense. We ain't... Right on. Look here. We can stop all of the rhetoric. We can stop all of the talking and vacillating and arguing about whether or not our struggle should be conducted along violent or nonviolent lines. When we wipe away, when we squash all of that bullshit rhetoric, and we get down to the fundamental facts, we find that we are in a situation where we are confronted by enemies who have dedicated themselves to extinguishing us, to killing us, to offing us. Now, it boils down to a simple question of what are you going to do about that? If you are a masochist, then the answer is quite simple. You will just allow your life to be snuffed out. You will allow them to kill you. And if you make that choice, then history cannot look upon you and will not look upon you as being a martyr, but they will look upon you as being a goddamn fool, a goddamn fool. However, on the other hand, if you look at your situation and you say that I am confronted by an enemy who is trying to kill me and I want to live, the next thing you have to do is you have to get yourself some equipment. You have to get yourself some tools to ensure your continued survival. Now, if your enemy has a 357, words are not going to get him up off your back. The only thing that can deal with that is another 357 or another gun. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. The whole issue ain't about whether we should be nonviolent or violent. The issue goes much deeper than that. The issue goes to whether we want to live or we want to die. And we are all here today because we want to live. We want to live. That's where that's at. The pigs know what this convention, what this plenary session signifies. They know what it means. They know what it means. And you can bet your life, because they are. You can bet your life that right now, down in some closed chamber in the Pentagon, there are individuals sitting around plotting and scheming on how they're going to prevent this convention from being a success. They've been plotting and scheming since we first mentioned it. They figured Rizzo could do the job. Rizzo blundered. He fucked up. The logic that dictates the actions of the pigs is so perverted and so depraved that they think that they can intimidate people. They think that they can frighten people off by simply shooting at them, shooting them down, and locking them up. Last night, some righteous brothers were coming to attend this convention, and they got ripped off by the pigs down here in Philly. They ain't stopped trying yet. They're still trying to frighten us out of having this convention. The pigs think that they can use violence to crush and destroy the determination of a people to be free. The pigs got to be crazy, because in fact, all that they do is, when they shoot down brothers and sisters in cold blood, when they concoct false conspiracy indictments and throw righteous brothers and sisters in jail, when they do that, in fact, all they do is awaken more people as to the reality of what's happening in America. They awaken more people, and they awaken more people to the reality that the situation has got to be changed. They don't frighten nobody off. They make them madder. That's all they do. That's all they do. When the pigs raided these cribs, the Panther cribs down here in Philadelphia, the response from the people was the exact opposite of what the pigs intended it to be. They thought that everybody would run in the house and hide. They thought that everybody would get under the bed. They thought that come Saturday, that only Panthers would be here at Temple University. They thought that everybody else would be someplace shivering in a closet. But when we look around this auditorium, we see thousands of people here, and we know that by this fact, and we know that thousands more are coming from all across the land. Some are hitchhiking, some are walking, some are taking a train, some are taking boats, some are taking planes. Some don't know how they're going to get here, but they're coming, and they're determined to get here. The pigs, by shooting down in cold blood righteous brothers and sisters, all they do is hasten their own doom. It's a situation wherein, in a feverish and a fiendish and a maniacal attempt to keep on perpetrating their madness, they are digging their own graves. With each bullet that they plunge into the body of a revolutionary, 10 more revolutionaries are born. Every time they draw up a false conspiracy indictment against some righteous brothers and sisters, all they do is give some more people who never thought about conspiring against this job government the idea. That's all they do. That's all they do. They are digging their own graves. America today is in a situation where it in fact has one foot in the graveyard and the other one standing on a banana peel, and they're slipping fast, fast, fast. That's the situation. That's the situation. Another one of the problems that confronts us is that too many people in this society are afraid. They're afraid to come out and take an uncompromising stand. They neither openly oppose or support. Their attitude is that they're going to get through all of this by just being cool, They're going to do their own thing. But when we look at the situation in America today, we find that America has named the game tag. They say the name of the game is tag, and specifically black people is it. They've also said that some white folks is it. I think Kent State was it. And if anybody after Kent State thought for one moment that America was not serious about creating a total fascist dictatorship, they got to be insane. Because for hundreds of years, it has been commonplace for this government, for the police and the army, and all of the other military forces of this government to, in a shameless fashion, shoot down black people and Indians and other oppressed minorities like it wasn't nothing to it, But when they came out at Kent State and shot down them four whites, That should have destroyed any illusions that anybody had about whether or not America was fascist. They have turned on their own sons and daughters. Not only do we have a struggle, this is a very unique situation that we are in, a very unique situation. Nowhere in the pages of any history book can you find a parallel situation. Because not only in America do we have a class struggle against those who have and those who have not, the gots and the don't have, but we also have a struggle that is manifesting itself along ethnic lines. We also have a struggle that is manifesting itself along the lines of sex. We also have a struggle that is manifesting itself along the lines of age. We have a hell of a struggle going on here. A hell of a struggle. A hell of a struggle. One of the problems also is that a lot of us have what you might call a fog perspective or tunnel perspective. We see ourselves as being black, so we think that we are oppressed and exploited exclusively for that reason, only because we're black. Others are homosexuals, and they think that they are exploited and oppressed only because they are homosexuals. Women think that they are exploited and oppressed only because they're women, and so on down the line. But when we check out the situation, and they also think that their freedom can only be gotten by waging it within their own specific area. But when we check out the situation, we find that the same beasts who are exploiting women, the same beasts who are exploiting black people, the same beasts who are exploiting everybody else in this country, it's the same beasts. Now, so we got to answer this question. Now, if it is the same forces, if it's the same beast who's perpetrating all of these inhuman crimes, how can we best overcome that? What can we do about that? Right on. I think everybody agrees on that. But we got to do it collectively. We got to do it together. One of the tools, one of the psychological tricks that America has used in order to keep people divided and to keep them from uniting and forming a common front against a common enemy is the concept of individualism. They've got us thinking that whatever we want, whatever we are lacking can be gained by pursuing it along individual lines. But when we check it out, we find that anyone in this society who is exploited, oppressed, and persecuted, when they attempt to correct that situation by moving along an individual line, all that happens is they get shot down individually. That's all that happens. But on the other hand, if we begin moving in a unified and collective fashion, we will find that the results will be quite different, quite simply because there are more people than there are pigs, and everybody knows except the pigs, and the pigs know it, but they don't want to realize it. We know goddamn well that the spirit of the people is greater than the pig's technology. We know that. And those of us who don't know that the only way we can get our freedom is by moving collectively, they better sit down and think about it. And they better check out a little history too. In fact, they can start by checking out what happened back in Nazi Germany. Because there was a situation wherein you had 63% of the population opposed to Nazi beast Adolf Hitler. You had 63% of the population, but he got in there. Why? Because the various groups that were opposed to him were not opposing him in a unified fashion. They had various political parties and various trade union parties who were fighting each other. The so-called communists over there were fighting the Social Democrats, and the Social Democrats were fighting the labor unions. Everybody was fighting everybody else, and when they looked up, it was January the 30th, 1933, and Adolf Hitler was the Chancellor of Germany, and it was too goddamn late. That's what happened. We have too many historical examples to reflect back upon that clearly tell us what happens when a people wait too long and when they refuse to bury their individual petty differences and unite around the fact that they are being exploited and oppressed by a common oppressor. We have too many examples that tell us what happened when the people don't dig on that. It was some old reactionary Spanish philosopher who said something very hip to the effect of that those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat its mistakes. And we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to do that. Because we have to understand once fascism is a reality in this country now, but we also have to understand that what we're witnessing now is nothing but a preliminary bout. The main event hasn't even started yet. This is nothing but a dress rehearsal. We ain't seen nothing yet. These pigs, these beasts have some ish lined up for us, you understand? They have some action lined up that look here, man, it can't be described in words what they plan on doing. It can't be described in words. And every day that we wait, every day that we vacillate, every day that we shuck and jive and argue over petty differences amongst ourselves only enables our oppressors to tighten up their hand and to be able to more effectively exterminate us. We don't have no time to be wasting. We don't have no time to be wasting. When we say seize the time, we mean, in fact, seize the time, seize the time. This is what we mean. When we say seize the time, we also mean that if you don't seize the time will seize you. That's what will happen. That's what will happen. The time seized those people in Germany who said they were against Hitler. It not only did the time seize them, but the time put them in concentration camps and in gas chambers. The time also seized 400,000 Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto, because there we have a very valid historical example. There we have a situation where, on one hand, Adolf Hitler came out point blank. Make no mistake about it, he didn't pull no punches. Way back in 1925 in Mein Kampf, he told everybody what he was going to do. He told everybody what he was going to do. And he put 400,000 Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto. And he told them that we are going to exterminate you. We are going to exterminate you. And to prove that he was going to exterminate them, he was shipping them out at the rate of 10,000 a day. 10,000 a day, sending them to extermination camps such as Auschwitz. Not only was he sending them to extermination camps, but they were also dying from every manner of contagious disease, typhoid, bubonic plague, TB, so on and so on. And that population of 400,000 decimated all the way down to 50,000 until that remaining 50,000 looked around at each other and said, God damn, you know what? I think Hitler is serious. He's going to kill us. They waited too goddamn long. That was the problem. They fought heroically. The fight that they put up was a monument, was a testimony to the will of a people to survive, but it still doesn't obviate the fact that they waited too long. Now, what we find happening in America today is that too many people are waiting too long. Too many people are waiting for the concentration camps to be open. The concentration camps are open. What you think Allenwood is? That's a concentration camp. They got people in Allenwood. El Rio down in Oklahoma, that's a concentration camp. Avon Park down in Florida, it's a concentration camp. Toll Lake in California, Wickensburg and Florence down there in Arizona, that's a concentration camp. America even has its own Siberia up in Alaska. They call it El Mendrov. That's a concentration camp. And people are in those places already, and there's still people walking around here talking about, well, I don't think we got fascism in this country because I don't see no concentration camps. Because I don't see no concentration camp. All you have to do is open up your eyes and look at the black colony of Harlem. Look at the black colony of Watts. Look at the black colony of North Philadelphia, in which Temple University sits in the middle of. All you have to do is to look at the colonized ghettos throughout all of racist Babylon, and you have, in fact, concentration camps. What is the difference between Harlem and Auschwitz concentration camp? What is the difference between Harlem and North Philadelphia and a strategic hamlet in Vietnam? What is the difference between, say, North Philadelphia and an Indian reservation? There is no difference. There is no difference. And if there is a difference, the only difference lies in the fact that they're in different areas. That's all. Because in every one of those situations, you have groups of people who are not in control of their own destinies, who have no say-so over who will be elected, and that's a fact. The people in this society have no say-so over who's going to office. They have run down a terrible sight game on us. They got us thinking that they have free and popular elections. There ain't no such thing as a free election in this society because your candidates are pre-chosen. Election time comes around and you have your choice between a pig, a hog, and a boar. That's the choice you get. That's the choice you get. And in actuality, it don't make a goddamn bit of difference if you pick the hog, if you pick the boar, or if you pick the pig, because one fundamental fact remains: they are all members of the swine family. They're all members of the swine family. They're all pigs. So you don't have any freedom of choice. It is only the American system of government. The American system of government is the only government, the only system of government in the world which allows representative senators like James Eastland from Mississippi to own a plantation upon which black people are being starved to death, and at the same time he's being paid tens of thousands of dollars each year not to grow crops. That can only happen. Look here, they talk about the American system of government, you understand, is the most unique government in the world. That's the gospel truth, because nowhere else could such a situation exist. Nowhere else. Nowhere else could you have that same individual, James Eastland, the head of the Judiciary Committee that's investigating so-called subversives in this country. Nowhere else but under the American system of government with the United States Constitution could you have a situation wherein the president can just up and launch an invasion into another country without the consent of Congress. Nowhere else but in the United States of America and under this system of government with its Constitution can you have a situation that allows tens of millions of black people to go to bed starving each night. Nowhere else but under the American system of government can you have a situation that in effect says that the people just don't have no rights. Look here, when we send representatives to office, look, let me tell you something. People talk about South Africa. The only thing that separates or that differentiates South Africa from America is that South Africa is very open about what they do. And the only advantage that not only black people, but all oppressed people in this country have over those brothers and sisters in South Africa is that we are able to go to the polls and cast a ballot to determine who is going to oppress and exploit us for the next 4 years. That's the only advantage. That's the only advantage. And as quiet as it's kept, we ain't gonna have that advantage too much longer, because the mad dogs down there in the White House and in the Pentagon are already making plans to cancel the 1972 elections. You see, this is what they're talking about. The same thing Hitler did. The same thing Hitler did. All these conspiracy charges that we see righteous brothers and sisters throughout the country being indicted on, the New York 21, the brothers and sisters up in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and all over the country. I think if I stood up here and ran off the list of all political prisoners in this country, we'd be here till about 9 o'clock tonight just dealing with political prisoners, because there's a common misconception. There's a common misconception. Everybody is running around here, or too many people are running around here thinking that the only place you have political prisoners are in the so-called show-enough penitentiaries. That's bull. Every man, woman, and child in this country who is exploited, oppressed, and who has been dehumanized is in fact a political prisoner. That is what they are. That is what they are. Brother Huey P. Newton, the Minister of Defense and Supreme Commander of the Black Panther Party, put it very eloquently, Jack, and very down to earth when he pointed out that the only difference between San Quentin and Fillmore in San Francisco, the only difference between Harlem and Sing Sing State Penitentiary is that one is a maximum security penitentiary and the other one is a minimum security penitentiary. That's the only difference. That's the only difference. Because you can believe as sure as pigs eat pork. Harlem is a penitentiary. That's all it is. It's a penitentiary. It's a cold-blooded penitentiary. It just doesn't have any bars around it. It has invisible bars, but it's a penitentiary. It's a penitentiary. And when you look at the guards, who drive up and down the streets of our community, in blue uniforms or in gray uniforms or in whatever color uniform they may wear in their particular city. When you look at them, you have to be some kind of brainwashed or some kind of spaced out or insane to believe that they are actually there to protect you, because we know they're not. We know they're not. When we look at the police who ride through our communities, we know that they are there for one reason and one reason only, and that is to guarantee that we don't get out of our places. And if we do get out of our places, to shoot us down in cold blood. That's the only reason they're there. And to make sure we stay there. The pigs, the guards in San Quentin Penitentiary and in Sing Sing Penitentiary fulfill and carry out the same function. They are in that penitentiary to make sure that the prisoners do not escape, to make sure that they stay locked up behind bars. There's no difference between a guard in San Quentin, a pig in San Quentin, and a pig who rides in a police car in Fillmore. There's no difference. Both of them are doing the same job before the same people. So there's no difference. And this is what we got to begin relating to. We got to understand that when we talk about securing the release of political prisoners, we're not just talking about Bobby Seale and the members of the New Haven Nine. We're just not talking about Lonnie McLucas. We're not just talking about the members of the New York Panther 21. We're just not talking about the LA 18. We're just not talking about the Soledad brothers. We're just not talking about those who are locked up behind visible bars. When we talk about securing the release of political prisoners, we're talking about getting some freedom, justice, and equality for every man, woman, and child in this country. That's what we're talking about. And you can believe that as long as them brothers are locked up in jail, as long as they are locked up behind those visible bars, ain't no way under the sun anybody in here can talk about they're free. It's no way under the sun. If you think that, you're just deluding yourself. The example that was laid down in terms of how to get brothers and sisters out of jail, the most valid example along those lines has been laid down by a group of righteous brothers down in South America by the name of the Tupamaros down in Uruguay. And it has been laid down by a group of brothers down in Brazil. And you can bet that it has righteously been laid down by a brother named by the name of Jonathan Jackson. By a brother by the name of Willie Christmas. By a brother by the name of James McClain and Rochelle McGee. They laid down the example. They laid down the example. Down in South America, they know when they want to get somebody out of jail, they ain't going to do it by demonstrating and boycotting. No. They have learned the art of fair exchange. You have somebody we want, and we have somebody you want. If you don't give us the people that we want, we ain't going to give you back the people that you want. It's as simple as that. And a few of them old jive U.S. imperialist supported and lackey governments tried to take a firm stand. And they said, well, this has gone too far. You're ripping off too many ambassadors. You're ripping off too many agents. So we're not going to give them up no more. Tupamaros said, right on, that's cool, you ain't got to give them up. In about 2 days, you can find the body of the CIA agent floating down the river. And that's where they found him. That's where they found him. That's where they found him. They knew that they wasn't going to demonstrate no political prisoner out no jail. They knew they wasn't going to picket or boycott no political prisoner out of jail. Jonathan Jackson and them brothers out there in San Rafael in California, they knew that what was confronting them was a fundamental choice of freedom or death. Now that's the same thing that racist Patrick Henry was talking about. What did he say? He said, give me liberty or give me death. And in school they tell us that was right on. They say that he was a righteous freedom lover. He was a servant of humanity. He was a man because he said that. But when Jonathan Jackson and them brothers said it, they didn't say that. They said that they was criminals. Who are they trying to jive? Who they trying to fool? Who are they trying to fool? We know that Jonathan Jackson and them brothers wasn't criminals. They were simply brothers and sisters, brothers who just stood up and said that either I will have my freedom or I will die trying to get it. And that's the same attitude that we must take, Man, you can believe that life is nothing without freedom. That's what life is supposed to be all about. It's as simple as that. We're supposed to be free because we're living. And if we can't get our freedom, then ain't nobody supposed to have it. That's what it boils down to. We have a situation where all the military and the economic power of this society rests in the hands of approximately 500,000 people. 500,000 people. Now, there are something like 206 million people in this country. I think 500,000 is about 1/4 of 1%. That 1/4 of 1% controls about 95% of all of the wealth in this country. I would have to say that would be a clear-cut illustration of inequality and unequal distribution. You know, that's unequal distribution. Whenever you have all the power over here resting in the hands of a small minority and all of the masses of the people over here dead, broke, and wallowing in the muck and mire of impoverishment and destitution, that is a messed up situation that has to be changed. And that's what we're down here for today. That's what we've come together for today. Because we have said to ourselves and to each other that too goddamn long has this madness been going down. And we have to understand that nobody is going to stop it but us. And if we are not going to take the initiative, if we are not going to move in the direction, if we are not going to move to end right now and bring to a grinding halt the diesel train of fascism that is roaring across the land, if we don't derail that train right now, look here, come the end of the 20th century, Jack, we ain't going to be around. We ain't going to be around. We all going to be dead. And if you think it can't happen, all you got to do is look back through the pages of history, because it has happened time and time again. And we can't afford to let that happen now. So we are down here today to put our heads together, to put our minds together, and to begin the process of drafting a new document, a new constitution that will in reality serve as the legal basis for this society. A document that will transform radically and revolutionarily this entire society. A document that in the end will result in the power being placed in the hands of the people where it should have been from Jump Street, but where it has never been. We are all about creating a document that will enable our brothers and sisters, everybody in this society, to have gainful employment, to have enough to eat. America is the richest country in the world. It accounts for about 6% of the total world population, but yet it controls over 57% of all of the wealth in the world. It has at its disposal every conceivable form of modern technology. It is capable of providing everyone with the highest possible standard of living. But the rulers of this society have seen fit not to do that. Why? Because if they did that, it would mean that cash would have to come out of their pocket. And you can believe that Rockefeller is not about to give up Standard Oil. Standard Oil belongs to the people. The people should own it. But Rocky ain't going to give up Standard Oil. He's not going to give it up. If the workers go on a show enough strike, the government will send out troops. The National Guard will be sent out to crush that strike. The Mellons ain't going to give up Chrysler. The Fords ain't going to give up Ford. The Pews ain't going to give up U.S. Steel. They ain't going to give it up. They ain't going to give none of it up, because it would mean that money would be coming out of their pockets. And they live for one thing and one thing only, and that is to accumulate wealth. They're dope fiends. They're dope fiends in the truest sense of the word, because they are hopelessly addicted to money. Money is the alpha and the omega of their existence. It is the beginning and the end of their life. This is what they're all about. Money is everything to them, and their existence has no meaning without cash. And they have not hesitated to do anything to make certain that they keep that money. So they're hopelessly addicted. There's really no cure for them. If there is a cure, yes, there is a cure. There is a cure. And that cure, yeah, there's a cure for them. Yeah. It's a shot, an injection that'll cure them. An injection that emanates not from a hypodermic needle, but from the barrel of a gun. That's their cure. They're not going to give it up, and we don't have it, and we supposed to have it. The only choice we got is to take it, So we're going to get together today, and we're going to begin moving towards that. We're going to hook up a new constitution. And I think everyone here should fully realize that when we draft that document, and when we present that document, don't think for one moment, please don't think for one moment, that Nixon and Agnew and company will look at that document and say, oh, I see you've drafted up a new constitution. Well, that's cool. Now, what do you want? You want Lockheed? Okay, there's Lockheed. You want DuPont? Okay, there's DuPont. You want General Motors? Okay, oh, hell no, they ain't gonna come out no bag like that. No, they're not gonna do anything like that. When we draw up this document, the pigs of America will all come together and form a united front for one purpose only, and that will be to crush us. So now if we are serious about drawing up a new document, if we are serious about drawing up a new constitution, we also have to be ready to defend that. We have to be ready to defend it, because they just ain't gonna give it to us. You make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it.
Deal with that for the hand.
What was she saying? Brothers and sisters, hold up. Look here. We are not going to allow one question to plunge us into chaos, confusion, and pandemonium. You see, we're not going to do that. We're not going to allow anybody to sabotage and to destroy what we want to do. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But out of respect, I'm going to address myself to that question, that asinine and ridiculous question. How many black millionaires are there? There's a handful. Maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So what? What does that mean? How many white millionaires are? And when you check out how many white millionaires there are, you simply find that they constitute, when you check out the white millionaires against those whites who don't have, you find that the percentage is about the same. It's about the same. Look here. Talking about black millionaires, there's another delusion that a lot of people are laboring under. There's another trick that a lot of people are going for, a lot of black people specifically. And that's the myth of black capitalism, Nixon, when he was campaigning for office, made it explicitly clear to black people that he gave a good goddamn about our vote. He told us that we could take our vote and ram it up our keisters. That's how I felt about that. But as a little mild concession to black people, he came out and he said, okay, black people are economically impoverished. They don't own anything. They don't have no wealth. They don't control any of the means of production. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them a little black capitalism, That's what he said he was going to do. And to carry out that function, to carry out that task, He's got Dr. Thomas Matthew. I guess you could call him the head of the black capitalist movement in this country. He's also got at his disposal Whitney Young and Roy Wilkins, who are also dedicated to the belief that black people should be incorporated into the mainstream of this society and that they should receive a bigger slice of the corrupt and diseased capitalist pie. They've told us that all of our economic problems can be solved by more black businesses being created. But recently, a few months ago, head of the Labor Department, one of the chief spokesmen for the Labor Department, came out and said he admitted himself that black capitalism was a failure. It was a failure because Standard Oil and General Motors, the two richest corporations in the world, couldn't afford to subsidize any black businessmen. Now, that like tells us right there what that's all about. But when we take it down to a deeper level, when we check it out even further and boil it down to the basic nitty-gritty, we find that what is the difference between a white capitalist and a black capitalist? What is the difference? If there is a difference, it only manifests itself along the lines of skin pigment. Because what happens is this: in the case of being exploited by in the case of a white capitalist is picking your pocket. In the case of a black capitalist is picking your pocket. The only difference is that the color of the hand has changed. In the case of the former, you have a white hand in your pocket. In the case of the latter, you have a black hand in your pocket. But the fundamental fact still remains: that hand is in your pocket and it don't belong there. So it don't make no difference what color the skin is. It don't make no difference. They got a group in this society that they call a black bourgeoisie. In actuality, ain't no such thing as a black bourgeoisie in this country. Because the bourgeoisie is quite simply those who control the means of production in the society. The bourgeoisie, who are the bourgeoisie? The bourgeoisie are the Rockefellers, are the Pews, the Fords, the DuPonts. Those are the bourgeoisie. You don't have no black people in this society who fall into that category. The only thing that black people produce, they don't produce nothing. The only thing they produce in this society is babies. That's all we produce. That's all we produce. And we say right on to that. We say right on to that. But that ain't sufficient. We don't own no factories. We don't own no factories. And all of these so-called members of the so-called black bourgeoisie, when we check them out, we find that they don't own nothing. They don't own nothing. They in reality are nothing but managers for the white capitalists. That's all they are. They don't own nothing. When we check out the the white bourgeoisie in this country, we find that they own factories. They own plants. They own tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres of land. When we check out the so-called black bourgeoisie, we find that they, as doctors and lawyers, don't own no property. We find that they are glorified clerks in some government agency, and they're supposed to be bourgeoisie. So they ain't no bourgeoisie. They don't own nothing. They don't own nothing. They say that the society that we live under is governed economically by the principle and the practice of free enterprise. Free enterprise. That is a goddamn lie. There's no such thing as free enterprise in this country. All they have in this country is, if you want to call it, they got some socialism in this country too. Yeah, they got some socialism. They got socialism for the rich and free enterprise, go for yourself, for the poor. That's what it boils down to. Economically, America is a monopolistic society. It is monopolistic. Anytime you have a situation where in a society, in a country, you have approximately 4,700,000 businesses, 4,700,000 businesses, and out of that, the 500 largest corporations account for damn near 50% of everything that is produced, sold, and manufactured in this country. That ain't free enterprise. That's monopoly. That's monopoly. Anytime you have a situation where in every sector of the economy you find one or two or three or no more than four corporations dominating that entire area of production. That's monopoly. That ain't free enterprise. Anytime you have a situation where you have, say, in the aluminum industry, where you have Alcoa, Kaiser, and Reynolds Aluminum, they run the whole show. They got it all. That ain't no free enterprise. That's monopoly. Anytime you have in the rubber industry, Uniroyal, BF Goodrich, Goodyear, and Firestone controlling the whole show, and there are hundreds of other rubber companies, that ain't no free enterprise. That's cold-blooded monopoly. Anytime you have a situation where you have a handful of banks, like the Bank of America, Chase Manhattan, First National City, anytime you have a situation where they control damn near all of the banking, that ain't no free enterprise. That's monopoly. There's no such thing as free enterprise in this country. There's no such thing. It died at the turn of the century. That's when it died. We have a situation where the administrators and the rulers of this society are telling people, especially black people, that if they want to better their economic plight, that they should go into business. But they don't tell us that each year approximately 15,000 businesses go out of business, and they're small businesses. We look at that in the ghetto, in the colony. We look at the grocery store on the corner that's owned by Joe would like to be capitalist nigger, you understand? Would really like to be, you understand? And we look up, Jackie opens a store in January, and by May, he's out of business. And what was a grocery store is now Cleaners. And 3 months later, the blood who owned the Cleaners is out of business, and now they got a fish and chip joint there. The only business in the black community that really survives is the liquor store. That's the only business. So when we look at it, we find that brother who owns that grocery store, he can't compete with A&P. He can't compete with the Safeway. He can't compete with Allied supermarkets. He can't compete with none of them. And as a result, he incurs great financial losses. He finds his ass up to in debt to the bank. And in time, he's got to sell out. And they're going to tell us that black capitalism is going to answer our problems. They got to be crazy. I wouldn't care if there were 10 million black millionaires in this country. It wouldn't make a goddamn bit of difference as far as the broad masses of the people are concerned. As long as they're capitalists, they are going to be manufacturing goods not for the purpose of serving the needs of the people, not for the purpose of allowing the people to buy items and products that are really beneficial to them. No, they're not going to be doing that. If there were 10 million black millionaires, they'd be doing the same thing that Rockefeller's doing. They'd be doing the same thing that the DuPonts are doing at General Motors. They'd be manufacturing cars that are systematically designed and guaranteed to break down in 3 years, so you have to go buy another one. That's what they'd be doing. So, it don't make no difference what color the skin of a capitalist is, be it black, white, purple, pink, green, gold. If a green capitalist came from Mars, he'd still be a capitalist. And he'd be off into the same thing. So what we're saying is that since the capitalist system of economic production is based upon the manufacturing of goods, not for the purpose of serving the needs of the people, but rather for the purpose of exploiting them, beating them out of their cash, since it is based upon exploitation of the masses of the people, we say that it's got to go. So we don't want no black capitalism, no white capitalism, no green capitalism. We don't want no kind of capitalism. When we check out the various economic systems existing today, we find that the only one that is capable of guaranteeing gainful employment, the only one that is capable of guaranteeing that people will be able to live in homes that are fit for the shelter of human beings, that they will be able to live in homes wherein they can put their babies in bed at night and not be worried about a huge, enormous rodent climbing into that crib and gnawing that baby to death. the only economic system that is capable of guaranteeing the people the right to determine the course of their own destiny, and that is capable of guaranteeing the people the right of determining what is made, how it is made, and how it is distributed, is the socialistic form of government, the socialistic system. That's the only kind, the only kind. We don't know. People ask, they say, well, what are you going to call the new system in America? We don't care what you call it. Names ain't important. That's one of our problems. We get hung up on the song, or we get hung up on the singing, forget all about the song. You see, it's not important what you call it. The important thing is what it is all about. If it is about, you understand, making certain that people can live in a harmonious and cooperative fashion without fear of having their bodies ripped off and thrown into jail and having a $100,000 bail slapped on them, if it is a society that is capable of guaranteeing that every man, woman, and child receives the highest possible standard of living, if it is a society based upon those principles and others, then I don't care what you call it, that's the kind of society we want. That's the kind of society we want. And so we see today that the present system of government is the exact opposite of what we want. The exact opposite. The people in this society have no say-so over what's going to be done and how it's going to be done. Their role is simply to consent to all of the madness that's going down. That's their role. That's their role. And we say, like they got a song out by Marvin Gaye, and it's got a verse in there, Jack, that we relate to very heavily. We sure enough relate to it. Because it says we are tired of this stuff, enough is enough, and we've come to the end of this road. And this is what we're saying now. We've come to the end of the road. We, the pigs, the fascists who control this country, are saying straight ahead, straight ahead. We're saying, no, we're not going straight ahead. We're putting up a detour sign. We're changing the direction in which this country is moving. We're going to derail the diesel train of fascism that's sweeping across the land. We're going to bring back down to earth that super jet plane of fascism that's flying across the skies. We're going to dump it. We're going to squash it. We're going to take this Constitution that is presently in existence and we're going to render it null and void. It ain't no good. It ain't never been no good. We don't need it. We got to get rid of it. That's what that boils down to. We are. We're going to sit down and we're going to draw up a document that says if you constitute 40% of the population or 30% of the population, then you deserve 30% of the wealth. If you constitute 10%, then you deserve 10%. That's what proportional representation is all about. That's what it's all about. It's not about a small handful of depraved and demented pigs owning everything at the expense of the people. We are saying, Jack, that if it's 30%, if the population is 30% black people, then they should own 30% of Standard Oil. They should own 30% of General Motors. They should control 30% of the seats in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. We're saying that if we're 30% of the population, we want 30% of all the action. Not only do we want 30% of all the action, not only do we want 30% of all the action, but when we take over those corporations, General Motors will not be based upon manufacturing tanks that don't even work. Tanks that when the troops get in them, you understand, they are more afraid of that tank blowing up than they are about getting in the way of a Viet Cong bullet. We say that when we take over Colt Industries, we're not going to be manufacturing M16s that blow up in the faces of the troops. The troops ain't got no business over there anyway, but we're not going to be making guns for that purpose. We're going to be making guns to distribute those guns to the people because we know that the only guarantee, the best guarantee that the administrators and those who the people select to conduct the affairs of state, the best guarantee that those administrators will not get down foul, the best guarantee that those administrators will not oppress and exploit the people is to give the people the guns, to give the people the guns. I think we all have to agree on this, that Brother Huey P. Newton hit the nail on the head and brought it right down to earth when he said that an unarmed people or people who are in slavery are subject to being enslaved at any time. America is very uptight today over the fact that so many people have guns. They don't want people to have guns because they know that once the people are armed, they are then in a position to move against those who are oppressing and exploiting them. Why can't Mao Zedong get down wrong in China if he wanted to? Because there are 700 million Chinese over there, and they all got guns. What is the guarantee that the brothers and sisters in North Korea will be properly represented? What is the guarantee they have that Kim Song and the other brothers over there will not oppress and exploit them? That guarantee is that the people are armed. They are armed. The Second Amendment of the Constitution of this country gives everyone a right to bear arms, But at the same time, the pigs are uptight now, and they dig that the people are going to be using those guns to get their freedom. So what are they talking about? They're saying you ain't got no right to bear arms. We say that's bullish. We need more than arms that are just capable of holding little babies. We need more than those kind of arms. We need arms that are capable of emanating bullets, that are capable of plunging into the body of depraved and demented beasts. Arms that will kill those pigs. That's the kind of arms we need. We need arms, and some more arms. We need as many arms as we can get. Because without those arms, we're going to find our asses in a flam. That's what's going to happen. A lot of people in this society are talking about freedom, but they do not relate. They really don't relate to self-defense. They really don't relate to it. I don't know, something happened to them. They on one hand talk about how bad things are in this country, and they don't see no sign that things are gonna get any better. But at the same time, they say that I can't pick up no gun. I think that is a form of madness. And I think that they are off into what we call reactionary suicide. That's what they're off into. You know, there are a lot of people who sit around and say, well, somehow, some way, someday, very shortly, everything is going to work itself out for the best. And then a few minutes later, their front door is crashed in, and there are 10 pigs standing in front of them with automatic weapons, shotguns, submachine guns, so forth and so on. You know, saying that somebody just got shot down the street, the officer just got shot down the street, and we think that the executor ran into your house, you know. So we're going to search your crib, and if you move, we're going to blow your head off, and we're going to blow off the head of your little baby and your wife. And he says, but ain't nobody coming here, ain't nothing happening in here. And the pigs say, shut up or you're going to be dead. And if he says one more word, they're either going to kill him or arrest him. But in the event that he lives and they storm on out, he looks around and he says, a lot of them say this. A lot of them after that has gone down say, well, things are getting pretty bad, but after all, you have to admit that this is the best country in the world. They got to be crazy. No, man, it don't work like that. They got an old adage that says, your home is your kingdom or something like that. That's your home. Nobody has the right. Your home is your castle. Nobody has the right to kick in your door, to drag you out of that home. They don't have that right. And if they attempt to do that, you are perfectly within your rights to shoot them down, They have something, they talk about black people are getting violent. White radicals are getting violent, and violence is wrong. This is what they say. They have confused and befogged that issue to such an extent that a lot of people are really going for that. But we say that violence manifests itself in a number of manners. We also say that there are basically and fundamentally, when you get right down to it, two forms of violence. There is what we term reactionary violence. That is the violence that is used by the oppressor to keep the oppressed in a state of subjugation and enslavement. And then there is revolutionary violence. That is violence that is used by those who are oppressed and exploited for the purpose of getting the oppressor up off of their backs. We say that the latter form of violence, revolutionary violence, is justified and should be endorsed and should be indulged in by every man, woman, and child who is concerned with freedom. And we say that the former form of violence, reactionary violence, is a crime against humanity. We say that when heroin is flooded into the black community and when 7- and 8-year-old black boys and girls are dying from ODs, we say that that is a form of violence. We say that forcing a people to live under barbaric and inhuman conditions where the plaster is falling off the wall and where little boys and little girls eat that plaster and incur lead poisoning, which leads to mental retardation and permanent brain damage, that's a form of violence. We say that when you go into the store and you are charged 10 times what the item is really worth, that is a form of violence. We say that, and beyond a doubt, when a pig rolls up on a black person or any person in this society and shoots them down in cold blood, that is a form of violence. And we say that anything we do to defend ourselves against that reactionary violence is justified, and that's what we should be off into. That's what that boils down to. We ain't even going to get hung up over whether we're going to be violent or not, because the fact of the matter is we don't have no choice. So we're going to get together today and we're going to put this thing into motion. And the end result of it is going to be a new society. Not only is it going to be a new society, but it's going to be a new world. It's going to be a new world, and we have to see it in those terms, because the entire fate of mankind, the fate and the destiny of humanity is dependent upon, to a very, very large extent, how effectively we do our job here today and in the following days to come. The fate of humanity rests upon us, you see. We have to understand our historical mission. I'm not glorifying what we're off into. I'm not bestowing upon it any undue praise. I'm simply making a statement of fact. And that fact is that if we do not do our job effectively, mankind is through dancing. It'll be all over with. So let's get on off into it. Let's take care of business. And I want to end by saying, oh yes, there's one more thing I want to say. There's one more thing I want to say. I want to notify all the brothers and sisters here that on September the 8th, 100 Center Street in New York City, the trial of 13 Black Panthers who were indicted on April the 2nd, 1969, for a conspiracy to blow up some tulips in the botanical gardens. And to blow up some department stores or something like that. That trial begins. And there's going to be a mass rally that morning beginning at 9 o'clock at 100 Center Street. Later on tonight, speaking will be the Minister of Defense and Supreme Commander of the Black Panther Party, Brother Huey P. Newton. The joint is packed now, Jack. We packed to the gills now. And come tonight, I guess we just going to be sitting on top of each other waiting to hear Huey, because he's got a hell of a message to deliver. All power to the people, and right on. To the people, all power to the people, all power to the people, all power to the people, right on. Right on.
more speeches, so no need to bother with it.
How long was that real?
Right on. I have some information for you. Because we know that the pigs don't want us to hold our plenary session, so they've been fucking with people. So we signed an injunctive release with the pigs, and the pigs are violating it. Now, we're going to have a table in the back when we come back this evening where the attorneys will be, and anyone who's been fucked with by these pigs, we'd like you to stop there and run it down to these attorneys. Now, we have attorneys at all the pig precincts around Philadelphia. So if anyone gets busted, you're to ask for the attorney that's there for the purpose of guaranteeing that you get your legal rights and so forth. Just to ask for that attorney. Okay, due to the problems of moving people in and the time, we're not going to be able to have any workshops today. What we're going to do is we're going to feed you. And we have, right on. We want the people, we want you to come back early this evening, around 6 o'clock, so that we can move in and everybody can be seated when the Minister of Defense gets here. Now, hold up, hold it. For the people who may not be able to get back in here, who may not be able to get back into the gymnasium tonight, we will have speakers outside, and there will be speakers set up at the Church of the Advocate so that you'll still be able to hear the Minister of Defense. Six.
What are the chances of recording the Huey speech this evening? Yeah. Tell me there'll be a meeting of security right down here. I want all the security people.
I liked it. I thought it was really a fascinating speech by a man who's going to defend himself at the Panther trial. Michael Tabor is an extremely articulate guy, and I thought he made a very effective and stimulating rap. And a lot of things he said, I think almost all, particularly what he says about doing it together, I agree with 100%.
You think he outlined any new directions for the movement to take?
Well, I thought what he did was articulate the past in good fashion, and then he said one thing I think that has to be said every day. We've all got to do it together. And it makes no sense if we don't do it together.
Thanks very much.
Okay.